The Council's mistake. The Grand Chamber of the Galactic Council had witnessed 10,000 years of deliberation, negotiation, and carefully measured discourse. Today, it witnessed something far rarer. Panicked Ambassador Thalamor of the Sindari. Concordat stood before the assembled delegates, her crystalline form refracting the chamber's ambient light into fractured rainbows across the curved walls. Her voice, translated through quantum resonators into 100 languages simultaneously, carried a tremor that no amount of diplomatic training could disguise. 3 years, she said, her words echoing in the vast space. 3 years of war. 200 million Kalrathi dead. Their industrial centers burned, their agricultural zones poisoned. And still, the Tarvish Empire advances. The holographic display behind her shifted, showing real-time feeds from Kalrathi Prime. Cities reduced to ash. Refugee columns stretching across scorched continents. Orbital bombardments turning night into artificial day as kinetic strikes carved new scars into an ancient world. Council Prime Vendrith, a towering Heptarian whose species had founded the Council millennia ago, made the gesture of deep concern, 6 of his 8 limbs crossing over his thorax. The situation is troubling. However, Protocol 17 clearly states, Protocol 17 be damned. The outburst came from Representative Kix of the Kalrathi delegation. The insectoid diplomat's mandibles clacked with barely contained fury. My people are dying while you cite protocols written before my species discovered fire. A wave of uncomfortable silence rippled through the chamber. Such raw emotion was considered crude, unseemly. The Council prided itself on measured responses, on diplomatic solutions that satisfied all parties. Violence was the realm of lesser civilizations, those too primitive to understand the elegance of negotiated peace. Ambassador Thalamor pressed forward. The Tarvish refuse all diplomatic overtures. They have ignored 17 ceasefire proposals, rejected 23 mediation attempts, and yesterday. She paused, her light flickering. Yesterday, they rejected the Council's own intercession. They told us, and I quote, "The weak have no voice in the affairs of the strong." Murmurs spread through the chamber. The Tarvish Empire had always been aggressive, expansionist, but they had never been openly contemptuous of Council authority. This was unprecedented. Military intervention is not the Council's way, Vendrith intoned, his voice carrying the weight of tradition. We are diplomats, mediators, peacekeepers in the truest sense. We do not wage war. Then find us someone who will. Kix's shout shattered the chamber's carefully maintained decorum. Find us someone willing to actually keep the peace, not just talk about it. The silence that followed was absolute. For nearly a full minute, no delegate spoke. The request was heresy against everything the Council represented. And yet, as feeds from Kalrathi Prime continued to display death and destruction, no one could voice an objection. It was Ambassador Lysander of the Primean Collective who finally broke the silence. There is one option. His tentacles writhed with uncertainty, though I hesitate to suggest it. Speak, Vendrith commanded. The humans. The chamber erupted. Voices overlapped in a dozen languages, creating a cacophony that the translation systems struggled to parse. Absolutely not. They've been Council members for barely 50 cycles. Primitive warmongers. They still engage in planetary conflicts. Vendrith raised his primary limbs for silence. Ambassador Lysander, explain your reasoning. Lysander's tentacles steadied. The humans are unique among Council species. They achieved spaceflight while still divided into competing nation-states. They've fought thousands of wars throughout their history. Their entire cultural development has been shaped by conflict and its resolution. Exactly why they're unsuitable, another delegate interjected. They're barely civilized. Or, Lysander continued, they're exactly what this situation requires. We asked them to join the Council because of their diplomatic achievements unifying their entire species under a single governance structure within a century of joining galactic society. But we forget what came before that unity. They understand both war and peace in ways we've long forgotten. Thelamore's form brightened. He's right. Human history is filled with instances of what they call peacekeeping operations. Military force deployed not for conquest, but for protection. A contradiction in terms, Vendrith observed. To us, perhaps. But humans have a saying, si vis pacem, para bellum. If you want peace, prepare for war. The debate raged for another hour. The traditionalists argued that inviting humanity to mediate would set a dangerous precedent. The progressives countered that the Tarvish had already shattered precedent by ignoring council authority. The Kelrathi delegation simply begged, their desperation growing with each passing minute as new casualty reports filtered in. Finally, Vendrith called for a vote. The measure passed by the narrowest of margins. 547 delegates in favor, 539 against, with 214 abstentions. The message was prepared with careful wording. The Council requested Earth's assistance in mediating and resolving the Verith conflict through diplomatic channels. There was mention of peacekeeping and humanitarian concerns, but no explicit discussion of military intervention. The Council assumed humanity would send negotiators, perhaps accompanied by a symbolic security detail. They had no idea what they had just unleashed. Asterisk 10,000 light-years away, Earth. Ambassador Patricia Chun stood before the United Earth. Assembly, the holographic message from the Galactic Council hovering between her and the gathered representatives. They're asking us to mediate? President Adeyemi leaned forward, her brow furrowed. That's unexpected. It's unprecedented, Chun confirmed. We've never been invited to lead a council initiative. Most of the older species still see us as children playing at galactic politics. Secretary General Kim studied the casualty reports from Kalrathi Prime. His jaw tightened. 200 million dead. How long has the council been mediating? 3 years. 3 years. Kim's voice was flat. And how many delegates has the council lost in the fighting? None, sir. The council doesn't deploy to active war zones. They conduct negotiations from neutral space. Admiral James Okafor, commander of the United Earth Defense Fleet, had been silent until now. When he spoke, his deep voice filled the chamber. They want us to negotiate with genocidal maniacs who've ignored the entire Galactic Council, while those maniacs are actively bombing civilians? That's the situation, Admiral. Okafor's laugh was devoid of humor. They have no idea who they just called, do they? President Adeyemi stood. Opinions, people. Can we negotiate with the Tarvish Empire? No. The response came from Director Sarah Winters of Earth's diplomatic corps. I've studied their culture extensively. They respect only strength. They view negotiation as something the weak do when they cannot fight. Any attempt at traditional diplomacy will be seen as confirmation of our inferiority. So we're supposed to do nothing? Chun's frustration was evident. Let the Kelrathi die because the Tarvish won't talk? I didn't say that. Winters pulled up her own data. Humans have successfully negotiated with aggressive powers throughout our history, but not through words alone. We negotiated because we had the capability to do otherwise. Speak softly and carry a big stick, as the old saying goes. All eyes turned to Admiral Okafor. He studied the tactical data from the Verith system, his expression unreadable. When he finally looked up, there was steel in his gaze. The Council asked for peacekeepers, he said slowly. They want us to end this war. They just don't realize that humanity's version of peacekeeping comes with teeth. President Adeyemi met his eyes. Admiral, I'm not sending you to start a war. No, ma'am. You're sending me to end one. The debate that followed was intense but brief. Earth had learned hard lessons from its own bloody history. Sometimes evil had to be confronted, not negotiated with. Sometimes peace had to be enforced, not requested. And sometimes the only language tyrants understood was overwhelming force. The vote was unanimous. 40-8 hours later, Earth orbit. The United Earth Defense Fleet's peacekeeping armada assembled in high orbit, a constellation of military might that would have seemed impossible just a century earlier. 12 dreadnoughts, each stretching 2 kilometers from bow to stern. 40 cruisers bristling with defensive and offensive systems. 80 destroyers built for speed and firepower. 200 support vessels loaded with medical facilities, humanitarian supplies, and engineering equipment. Admiral Okafor stood on the bridge of the UEDF Indomitable, watching as the last vessels assumed formation. His XO, Commander Sarah Reeves, approached with a datapad. Fleet reports ready for jump, sir. All vessels fully supplied and crews at stations. Rules of engagement confirmed? Yes, sir. Weapons free upon arrival if Tarvish forces are engaged. In active hostilities against civilians or military targets. All commanders briefed on discrimination protocols. We protect the Kilrathi, not conquer them. Okafor nodded. And the Council? Have they been informed of our deployment? Reeves allowed herself a slight smile. Ambassador Chun sent notification an hour ago. We should be receiving their response right around the time we arrive in the Varith system. They're going to lose their minds when they realize we sent warships instead of diplomats. With respect, sir, we are sending diplomats. Diplomacy just comes in different forms. Okafor turned to face his crew. Every station was manned, every system green. These men and women represented the best of humanity, trained not just to fight, but to think, to discriminate between threats and innocence, to protect those who couldn't protect themselves. Helm, all vessels ready? Aye, sir. Jump calculations locked in. Then let's go teach the galaxy what human peacekeeping really looks like. He settled into his command chair. All ships execute jump in 3.2.1. mark. Space folded. Reality bent. And humanity's answer to the Galactic Council's plea crossed 10,000 light years in an instant. When the fleet dropped out of FTL at the edge of the Varith system, alarms immediately blared across every ship. The tactical displays painted a picture of ongoing horror Tarvish bombardment ships in orbit over Kilrathi Prime, launching strikes every few minutes. Kilrathi defense platforms trying desperately to intercept. Civilian transports fleeing the planet, some exploding as Tarvish fighters hunted them down. Admiral Okafor's expression hardened. All ships, battle stations. Deploy humanitarian vessels to safe distance. Combat groups, form on me. He opened a channel that would broadcast to every ship in the system Kilrathi, Tarvish, and the Galactic Council observers monitoring from afar. This is Admiral James Okafor of the United Earth Defense Fleet. We have been requested by the Galactic Council to establish peace in this system. He paused, letting his next words carry their full weight. To all Tarvish forces, you have 6 hours to cease hostilities and withdraw beyond the heliopause. This is your only warning. The response from the Tarvish came almost immediately. It was laughter, harsh and mocking. Humans? The Council sent humans? The Tarvish commander's translated voice dripped with contempt. We will teach you the same lesson we taught the Kilrathi. Weakness invites destruction. Return to your primitive world before you share their fate. Admiral Okafor checked his chronometer and made a note of the time. 6 hours. He would give them exactly 6 hours. Then the galaxy would learn what happened when you mistook human compassion for weakness. Asterisk. Peace through superior firepower, Hour 1. Assessment Admiral Okafor stood before the tactical hologram, watching the Tarvish Empire's war machine at work. The display showed 17 bombardment cruisers in geosynchronous orbit over Kelrathi Prime, their positions calculated to maximize planetary coverage. Every 8 minutes, they launched another salvo kinetic penetrators that carved through atmosphere and infrastructure with equal ease. Pattern analysis, Commander Reeves. They're systematic, sir. Targeting industrial centers, power generation, water treatment. Classic siege doctrine: destroy the infrastructure, break the will to resist. She zoomed in on a particular sector. But they're also hitting purely civilian targets, hospitals, schools, residential districts with no military value whatsoever. Psychological warfare. Lieutenant Zhao added from the intelligence station. They want the Kelrathi to know that nowhere is safe. That resistance is futile. Okafor's jaw tightened. Humanity had its own dark history with such tactics. The difference was that humanity had learned from those mistakes, codified them into laws, sworn never again. The Tarvish seemed to revel in them. Kelrathi military status? Scattered. They're down to 30% combat effectiveness. Most of their orbital defense grid is destroyed. Ground forces are conducting guerrilla operations, but they're running out of supplies. Zhao highlighted several positions. They've been fighting for 3 years, sir. They're exhausted. Civilian situation? Catastrophic. Best estimates put the death toll at 217 million. Another 300 million displaced as refugees. Their ecosystem is on the verge of collapse from the bombardments. Okafor turned to his communications officer. Have the Tarvish responded to our ultimatum? Yes, sir. They sent another message 20 minutes ago. It was explicit in its rejection. Let me hear it. The officer hesitated, then played the recording. The Tarvish commander's voice was thick with derision. Your 6 hours amuse us, humans? We have heard tales of your species, how you war among yourselves over resources and territory like animals. You are children pretending to be warriors. We are the Tarvish Empire, conquerors of 17 star systems. We do not negotiate. We do not retreat. And we certainly do not take orders from primitives who have barely learned to leave their own solar system. Attack if you dare. We will add Earth to our list of conquered worlds. Silence fell across the bridge. Okafor noticed his crew's expressions: anger, determination, and something else. A cold, professional focus that spoke to years of training and discipline. Thoughts, Commander? Reeves's voice was ice. They've just threatened Earth directly, sir. That changes the parameters. Indeed it does. Okafor pulled up the fleet disposition. Let's use these 5 hours productively. I want full tactical analysis of every Tarvish vessel. Weaknesses, blind spots, command structure. Deploy reconnaissance drones, passive sensors only. I don't want to spook them yet. And the humanitarian vessels, sir? Position them at the edge of the engagement zone. The moment we engage, I want them ready to move in for rescue operations. Coordinate with whatever's left of the Kelrathi defense forces. Let them know we're here to help, not to conquer. As his crew executed his orders, Okafor opened a private channel to the fleet's other commanders. 12 dreadnought captains appeared on his screen, representing the best tactical minds humanity had produced. You've all heard their response. You've all seen what they're doing down there. Before we do this, I need to know, is everyone clear on the mission parameters? Captain Norrison of the UEDF Relentless spoke first. Crystal clear, sir. We stop the Tarvish. We protect the Kelrathi. We do not occupy. We do not conquer. We do not take territory. We enforce peace. The other captains echoed their agreement. Good, because in 5 hours, the galaxy is going to be watching. And they're going to judge not just our effectiveness, but our character. We're not here to prove humanity is the strongest. We're here to prove we're the ones who give a damn. Hour 3. The ultimatum, the Galactic Council's emergency session, was in chaos. Holographic feeds showed the human fleet in the Virth system, and the implications were only now beginning to dawn on the assembled delegates. They sent warships. Council Prime Vondreth's 8 limbs were fully extended in shock. We asked for mediators. Ambassador Chun's hologram remained calm amid the uproar. You asked for peacekeepers, Council Prime. Earth sent its peacekeepers. That they're equipped to actually enforce peace should not be surprising. This is unacceptable. The Primean delegates' tentacles lashed in agitation. Military force was never authorized. Your authorization never specified the means, Chun countered. You requested our assistance in ending the conflict. We are ending it. Would you prefer we let the Kelrathi be exterminated while you draft another strongly worded resolution? Ambassador Thelamor's crystalline form pulsed with what might have been satisfaction. The humans are doing what the Council lacks the courage to do. Perhaps we should observe before condemning. Observe what? A massacre? The Tarvish fleet outnumbers the humans 3-1. Chun smiled. It was not a pleasant expression. I would recommend, Council Prime, that you don't underestimate us. Again. Hour 5. Final preparations aboard the Indomitable. Every system was primed. Admiral Okafor walked through his ship, visiting each deck, each station. He'd learned long ago that crews fought better when they knew their commanders saw them as people, not just numbers on a roster dot in the medical bay. Dr. Yuki Tanaka was running final checks on the trauma units. We're ready, Admiral. 30 operating theaters, 200 critical care beds. We can handle significant casualties. Let's hope we don't have to use them all. In the fighter bay, Squadron Leader Marcus Webb stood beside his interceptor, checking flight systems. My pilots are eager, sir. These Tarvish bastards have no idea what real fighter tactics look like. Keep your people sharp, Marcus. Aggressive, but disciplined. We're not here for glory. We're here to save lives. Understood, sir. Back on the bridge, Commander Reeves had the final tactical analysis ready. Sir, we've identified their command structure. The lead bombardment cruiser, Dominant Fang, coordinates all orbital strikes. Take it out, and we disrupt their entire operation. Vulnerabilities? Their shields are powerful, but omnidirectional. They're designed to defend against the Kelrathi's plasma weapons. Our railguns and kinetic systems will penetrate more effectively. She highlighted several points. Their point defense is concentrated forward and amidships. Stern quarter is relatively exposed. Fleet coordination? Rigid. They operate on a strict hierarchy with minimal autonomous decision-making. Standard Imperial doctrine. If we can break their command chain, individual ships will struggle to adapt. Okafor nodded slowly. Everything was falling into place. He checked the chronometer. 47 minutes remaining. He opened a channel to the Tarvish fleet. Tarvish Command, this is Admiral Okafor. You now have 47 minutes to begin your withdrawal. This is your final opportunity to comply peacefully. The response was immediate. We have already given you our answer. Human. If you are foolish enough to engage, we will destroy you. Then we will find Earth and teach your species the cost of arrogance. Okafor closed the channel and turned to his crew. Did everyone hear that? They just threatened our homeworld. When we engage, it's not just for the Kelrathi. It's to ensure the Tarvish never have the opportunity to make good on that threat. His crew's acknowledgement was unanimous and grim. The minutes ticked down. Okafor used the time to review the plan once more, checking every contingency, every backup protocol. This wasn't his first combat operation, but the stakes had never been higher. Humanity's reputation in galactic society hung in the balance. 10 minutes before the deadline, he received an unexpected transmission. It was from the Kalrothi ground commander, General Zith. Admiral Okafor, I must speak plainly. Your fleet is impressive, but you are outnumbered. The Tarvish have 83 warships in this system. They have been fighting for 3 years, and their tactics are brutal but effective. I cannot ask you to sacrifice your people for ours. Okafor respected the sentiment. General, with respect, you didn't ask. We came because it was the right thing to do. And we're not here to sacrifice, we're to win. I hope your confidence is warranted. My people have lost so much already. I could not bear to watch another species destroyed on our behalf. General, do you trust your sensor readings? Yes. Then watch closely over the next hour. And after, we'll discuss how Earth can help rebuild your world. Hour 6. Hour 0, the chronometer reached 0. Admiral Okafor took one last look at his fleet disposition. Everything was in position. He thought of all the military leaders throughout human history who had stood at similar moments facing overwhelming odds, fighting for something larger than themselves. He thought of the millions of Kalrothi counting on a miracle, and he gave the order that would change galactic history. All ships, execute Battle Plan Alpha. Engage. Space erupted with violence. The human fleet didn't charge forward recklessly. Instead, they executed a maneuver the Tarvish had never encountered, a cascading wave assault. The first line of destroyers accelerated to attack speed, launching a devastating spread of missiles programmed with chaotic evasion patterns. As the Tarvish point defenses focused on the incoming ordnance, the destroyers peeled away, and the cruisers emerged from their sensor, shadow. Railgun rounds crossed the distance at a significant fraction of light speed. The Tarvish shields, designed to dissipate energy weapons, proved woefully inadequate against kinetic penetrators. 3 Tarvish frigates disintegrated in the opening salvo, their hulls simply unable to withstand the kinetic transfer. Tarvish fleet is breaking formation. Lieutenant Zhao reported. They're attempting to regroup. Don't let them. All dreadnoughts, execute primary targeting. Hit the dominant fang. The 12 human dreadnoughts had been holding back, seemingly in reserve. Now they revealed their true purpose. Each vessel carried a spinal mass driver, a weapon that accelerated a tungsten penetrator to devastating velocities. 12 rounds fired in coordinated sequence. Time to hit simultaneously. The dominant fang's shields flared, absorbed the first 3 impacts, weakened under the 4th and 5th, and collapsed entirely under the 6th. The remaining 6 penetrators tore through the cruiser's hull like paper, secondary explosions rippling along its length. Target destroyed. Tarvish command network disrupting. But the Tarvish weren't helpless. Their counterattack was fierce plasma lances and particle beams reached across the void. The human fleet's shields absorbed most of the impacts, but not all. The destroyer UEDF Vigilant took a direct hit, losing power to its aft sections. Vigilant reports casualties, requesting support. Dispatch rescue vessels. Vigilant, fall back to secondary position. Okafor watched the tactical display recalculate in real time. The Tarvish were adapting, trying to use their numerical advantage to surround and overwhelm isolated human ships. They're attempting an envelopment maneuver, Reeves observed. Let them think it's working. All fighters deploy now. 200 human interceptors burst from their carrier base, far faster and more maneuverable than anything the Tarvish possessed. Earth's experience with atmospheric combat translated surprisingly well to space. The pilots understood 3-dimensional tactics instinctively, using gravity wells and orbital mechanics to their advantage. The fighters didn't engage the capital ships directly. Instead, they targeted the Tarvish bomber wings that had been terrorizing Kalrothi ground positions. It was a slaughter. Human pilots, trained in tactics developed over centuries of aerial warfare, decimated the Tarvish bombers within minutes. Kalrathi ground forces are reporting the bombardment has stopped. Zhao's voice carried genuine excitement. Good. Now let's make sure it stays stopped. Commander Reeves, initiate Phase 2. Phase 2 was the most audacious part of the plan. While the main fleet kept the Tarvish fleet engaged, a strike group of cruisers executed a high-speed burn directly toward Kalrathi Prime. Their mission wasn't to fight it was to deploy the humanitarian vessels. The Tarvish commander, struggling to coordinate his disrupted fleet, made a fatal error. He dispatched a squadron to intercept the humanitarian vessels. Seeing them as vulnerable targets, he didn't realize it was a trap dot as the Tarvish squadron closed on what they thought were defenseless medical ships. They found themselves in a carefully prepared kill box. Human destroyers that had been running silent powered up simultaneously, surrounding the Tarvish ships. The engagement lasted less than 3 minutes. Enemy squadron eliminated. Humanitarian vessels deploying to Kalrathi Prime. Admiral Okafor allowed himself a tight smile. The battle was far from over, but the momentum had shifted decisively. The Tarvish fleet, despite its numerical advantage, was fighting in disarray. Their rigid command structure, severed by the destruction of their flagship, left individual captains uncertain and reactive. The human fleet, by contrast, operated with fluid coordination. Each captain had autonomy within the overall strategy, adapting to local conditions while maintaining the larger objective protect the Kalrathi. Sir, receiving multiple hails from Tarvish vessels. They're requesting terms of surrender. Okafor's expression hardened. Tell them they have one option: immediate withdrawal beyond the heliopause. Any ship that powers down weapons and begins retreating will not be fired upon. Any ship that continues hostile action will be destroyed. No negotiation. Over the next 20 minutes, the Tarvish fleet fractured. Some captains, seeing the futility of continued resistance, powered down and began withdrawal burns. Others, driven by pride or fear of imperial retribution, fought on. The human fleet was methodical in dealing with the holdouts, no unnecessary destruction, but absolutely no mercy for those who continued to threaten Kalrathi. Civilians dot the final Tarvish warship to surrender. Was a heavy cruiser that had been attempting to destroy evacuation sites on Kalrathi Prime's surface. Squadron Leader Webb's fighters disabled its engines with precision strikes, leaving it dead in space. Sir, Tactical confirms no remaining hostile vessels in the engagement zone. 17 Tarvish ships destroyed, 66 retreating as ordered. Our casualties? 4 ships with significant damage, including Vigilant. 63 personnel killed in action, 214 wounded. Medical teams are responding. Okafor bowed his head briefly, feeling the weight of those losses. 63 men and women who would never see Earth again. He would write letters to their families, attend memorial services, ensure they were remembered as the heroes they were. But right now, there was work to do. Deploy all humanitarian vessels to Kalrathi Prime. Coordinate with General Zith's forces. I want medical teams on the ground within the hour. Engineering corps begin assessment of orbital infrastructure. We're going to help them rebuild. Admiral, Reeves said quietly, you should see this. She transferred a feed to his command screen. It showed the view from one of the humanitarian vessels now entering Kalrathi Prime's atmosphere. Below, Kalrathi civilians emerged from shelters, looking up at the sky. At human ships descending not with weapons, but with medical supplies, food, water purification systems, and on every frequency, in every language, one word repeated: thank you. Aftermath. 3 days later, the Grand Chamber of the Galactic Council was silent as Admiral James Okafor's hologram materialized at the center of the floor. It was highly irregular for a military officer to address the council directly. But then, everything about this situation was irregular. Council Prime Vendrith spoke first. "Admiral Okafor, your actions in the Verith system have generated considerable debate." "I imagine they have, Council Prime. You deployed military force without explicit authorization. You engaged in offensive combat operations. You destroyed 17 vessels and killed thousands of Tarvish personnel." Vendrith's limbs made a gesture of accusation. "Some members call your actions reckless. Others call them necessary. All agree they were unprecedented. With respect, Council Prime, genocide is also unprecedented in recent galactic history. Or at least, it was tolerated as unprecedented." Murmurs rippled through the chamber. Ambassador Lysander tentacled his approval, while others recoiled at Okafor's bluntness. "You presume to lecture this council on morality?" a Heptarian delegate demanded. "No, sir. I presume to show you what morality looks like when it has teeth." Okafor's image remained steady, his voice calm but unyielding. "For 3 years, the council negotiated. For 3 years, you sent strongly worded messages in organized committees. For 3 years, 200 million Kalrathi died while you debated protocols. And you, what simply decided to wage war in our name? No, we decided to stop a war. There's a difference." Okafor pulled up tactical data. "We gave the Tarvish 6 hours to withdraw peacefully. They refused and threatened Earth directly. At that point, we had 2 choices. Allow them to continue their genocide and eventually threaten other worlds, or stop them. We chose to stop them. With violence. With force. Precise, proportional, targeted force. We destroyed 17 ships, only those that continued hostile action. We allowed 66 ships to withdraw unmolested. Our fighters could have pursued and destroyed the retreating fleet. We didn't. Why? Because our mission wasn't conquest. It was protection." Ambassador Thalamor's crystalline form brightened. "The Admiral speaks truth. Human forces have made no territorial claims. They've demanded no concessions. They've simply stopped the killing and begun helping survivors. That doesn't change the fact that they used military force without proper council oversight." Okafor's expression hardened. "Then let me be crystal clear, Council Prime. You asked Earth for help. We gave it. If the Council's definition of help means writing reports while innocents die, then we fundamentally disagree on what it means to keep the peace. You cannot simply, 'We already did.'" Okafor's interruption sent another wave of shock through the chamber. "And we'd do it again. Humanity didn't claw its way up from a planet full of conflict and suffering just to sit idly by while others experience the same. We've made mistakes, terrible mistakes, and we've learned from them. One lesson stands above all others. Evil triumphs when good people do nothing. And you appoint yourselves arbiters of good and evil? No, we appoint ourselves defenders of those who cannot defend themselves. There's a human saying, Council Prime, all that is necessary for evil to triumph is for good men to do nothing. You did nothing. We did something." The chamber erupted in argument. Some delegates praised humanity's intervention. Others condemned it as dangerous precedent. The debate raged for hours, with no clear consensus emerging. Finally, Representative Kix of the Kalrathi delegation rose. The chamber fell silent. The survivors had earned the right to speak. Council Prime honored delegates. "My world burns. My people die. For 3 years, we pleaded for help. We received sympathy, negotiation attempts, and protocols." Kix's mandibles clicked slowly. "Then humans came. Not with words. With dreadnoughts. With fighters. With medical ships and engineers and soldiers who fought to protect strangers they'd never met. The Calrathi representative turned to Okafor's hologram. "Admiral, your people lost 63 soldiers protecting mine. We will honor their sacrifice for 1,000 generations. We will build monuments to their memory. And we will tell our children that when darkness came, humanity stood in the breach." Kix faced the council again. "Debate if you must about protocols and precedents. But know this, the Calrathi will never forget who spoke pretty words, and who actually saved us." In the end, the council passed a resolution not of condemnation, but of concern regarding the use of military force in peacekeeping operations. It was a carefully worded compromise that satisfied no one and resolved nothing, but Admiral Okafor didn't care about council resolutions. As his hologram faded from the chamber, he returned his attention to Calrathi Prime, where human engineering teams worked alongside Calrathi survivors to rebuild infrastructure, where human medical personnel treated the wounded, where human soldiers stood guard, ensuring the Tarvish never returned. Commander Reeves found him in his ready room, reviewing casualty reports. "The Council's resolution is all over the news feeds, sir. They're calling it a diplomatic middle ground. Diplomacy." Okafor's smile was tired. "We gave them diplomacy. It just came with raildens. Some species are calling us warmongers. Others are calling us heroes. Let them call us whatever they want. The Calrathi are alive. That's what matters." He closed the reports and stood. "What's the status of the memorial service?" "Scheduled for tomorrow at 0800. General Zeeth is sending representatives." "Good. Those 63 gave everything so others could live. That deserves to be remembered." As Okafor walked through his ship, he passed crew members working to repair battle damage, medical staff tending to the wounded, off-duty personnel writing messages home to loved ones. These were the people who had answered when the galaxy called for help. These were the people who understood that sometimes peace required those willing to fight for it. Humanity had come to the stars, carrying lessons learned from millennia of conflict, the mistakes, the triumphs, the terrible wisdom that came from understanding both war and peace. The galaxy had expected diplomats in suits, offering words and negotiations. Instead, they got dreadnoughts and determination. They got warriors who fought not for glory or conquest, but for the simple principle that the strong had a duty to protect the weak. The Galactic Council had asked for peacekeepers. Humanity showed them what peacekeepers looked like when they were willing to actually keep the peace, and the galaxy would never look at Earth the same way again. Asterisk